for providing honest, objective advice, which is something that I always knew General George to give, then I fear that it's going to have a trickle-down effect that's going to be devastating to the other officers and especially how their spouses feel about continuing to spend their lives in service. This is a team sport. The officer and the spouse are in this together. And I think that General George and his wife Patty, I think they were very unfairly treated. And I would appreciate if the Secretary of Defense would be forthcoming with whether or not 4 names were removed from the list. I'm less concerned about race and gender than I am why they were removed from the list, and if he has individually changed the way we're going to handle the promotion and the selection and promotion of our general officers in the military. I'll move to the Air Force real quick. I want to ask with regard to combat search and rescue, the A-10 general has provided that, has been a big part of that mission. What the Air Force plans to retire the A-10, unfortunately. What is the Air Force doing to prepare for combat search and rescue when the A-10 is retired?
Congressman, it'll be a mix of platforms, just like it's been a mix of platforms in the past with HH-60s and overhead folks doing that coordination role that the A-10s have done very well over the years.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but an HH-60 is a helicopter, correct?
For the CSAR, yes. I thought you were talking about CSAR Vice CAS. Yes, sir.
Ms. Strickland, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Bergman, Ranking Member Garamendi, and thank you to all of our witnesses for your testimony today and your continued service. This hearing comes at a critical moment. U.S. forces are not just preparing for conflict, they are actively engaged while continuing to meet global commitments across multiple theaters. The core question I have today is not whether the joint force can fight tonight, it is whether we can sustain operations, absorb losses, and regenerate combat power fast enough to remain ready for a large-scale conflict. So I'm going to start with General Leneve. I want to discuss force allocation, health, and long-term readiness. General Leneve, the Army is deploying high-demand systems like air defense systems across multiple theaters. Are these the same systems we would rely on in a large-scale conflict?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and what risks does that create for our ability to respond to a second contingency?
Ma'am, my role as the vice is to man, train, equip, and certify and to build the force that COCOM commanders will utilize. We're supporting Admiral Cooper and team. If we have to surge to another location, then we'll have to look at how we balance that to be able to provide the resources necessary. I appreciate the question.
All right, this is about force health and long-term readiness now. General Leneve, are sustained operational demands impacting retention, family stability, or overall force health in ways that could degrade readiness over time?
Yeah, ma'am, again, thank you for the question. We are not seeing a degradation in retention, right now. We will let you know if we see that over time. It's something that we look at. We continue to assess where the force is, but right now retention and recruiting is up.
All right, thank you. Now I'm going to go to General LaMontagne to shift to aircraft capacity and the Air Force's role in sustaining operations. General, last year the Air Force testified it was operating the oldest and smallest fleet in history with elevated readiness risk. Since then, we've seen confirmed aircraft losses and additional battle damage. At an unclassified level, what concerns do you have that the Air Force has regarding its ability to maintain aircraft capacity and maintenance depth to sustain current operations while possibly preparing for a large-scale conflict?
Congresswoman Strickland, thank you very much for the question. Key issue for our United States Air Force, as you outlined and as we've testified previously. And so we are redoubling our efforts to invest in our ability to maintain the airplanes. Historically, we've invested in our weapon system sustainment, which is largely spare parts engineering and a lot of other things that supports that, to about an 85% level. Last year, it was an 86% level, so some improvement, but not enough. This year's budget in '27 takes us to 93%, an additional $3.2 billion to help us sustain those airplanes over time. Very important issue for your United States Air Force.
Great, thank you. And in closing, I want to just remind us that we're experiencing aircraft losses and damage, expanding munitions at high rates, operating within an industrial base that is constrained and placing sustained demand on the force itself. So really the question we should ask ourselves, are we maintaining readiness for a large-scale peer conflict, or are we consuming the force faster than we can regenerate it? And to my colleague, Congressman Austin's question about what happened with General George, General George was in charge of First Corps at Joint Base Lewis McChord when I was mayor of Tacoma. He and his wife have dedicated their lives to serving our country. And just to be clear, once the Secretary of Army clears an individual for promotion to general, the Secretary of Defense should not be removing them because their records have been highly vetted, highly scrutinized, and these people are qualified for the jobs. And we look forward to hearing an explanation from Secretary Hegseth when he meets with the full House Armed Services Committee on April 29th. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Jimenez, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm going to go with a little different line of questioning. And for Admiral Kilby, what is the size of our fleet today?
292 ships, sir.
How many of those are combat ready?
It depends on the class. If it's surface ships, 63% are combat surge ready. If it's submarines, 65% combat surge ready. And if it's amphibious ships, 45% combat surge ready.
Is every ship, you have 292 ships, are all those fully billeted?
They are not all fully billeted. We have, as I said in my opening statement, 18,000 gaps at sea. So those gaps are spread across all those ships.
But are there ships that are not combat ready that have crews for those ships?
Yes, sir.
How many of those do we have?
I have to get back to you exactly on how many ships are in the depot right now.
All right. General Lamontagne, I'm sorry, I mispronounced. How many planes do you have in the Air Force?
So I don't have the exact total with me here today. I have a detailed breakdown, can go plane by plane, but I'll come back to you with that, with the total.
Okay, what percentage of those planes are combat ready?
Sir, so I'll break it up into two pieces, and happy to come back to you at a higher level of classification. The actual rates exceed the classification of this hearing, sir, but want to come back to you and your team